Okay, so because of what has happened with class cancellations and whatnot, um, we will be adjusting our schedule for a little bit. So today is supposed to be your first long exam for Module 1, but starting today, we will be opening Module 2. So I haven't really published it yet, but I will open Module 2 after today's lecture, which I don't think should take too long. It's an introduction to systems ecology. Now, after today, in order for us to stay on schedule, I hope you can start watching lecture 1 of module 2, because on Monday, September 29, um, we'll go ahead and discuss further several key points about systems ecology, which is, I think, in good preparation for your upcoming activities in the lab, which is on the physico-chemical characteristics of the environment. Okay, and then on September 29, after the class, I hope you can watch lecture 2. We'll have a short intermission wherein if the weather permits, we'll have your first long exam on October 2. And then on October 6, we go back to our programming for systems ecology, where we have your first quiz, and then again, class discussions, and then please watch lecture 3. And then October 9 is another face-to-face session. I think I've prepared a seat work for everybody for that day. October 13 is for your second quiz on systems ecology. October 16 is another face-to-face session. And then October 20, you'll have your third quiz, and also a review session similar to what we've had for Module 1. And then your long exam for Module 2 is scheduled on October 22. Okay, I've received a note that October 22 is a Wednesday. Oh yeah, sorry, that should be October 23. So your second long exam is October 23. Let me just correct that. I think we have time. October 16 plus 7, October 23. There you go. Let me just print screen. There you go. Delete. Paste. There. So yeah, your second long exam will be on October 23, which is a Thursday. So that's our schedule for module 2. Before we proceed, any questions or points of clarification regarding our schedule? Okay, if none, let's go ahead and proceed. Sige, let's start module 2 with an opportunity for you to contribute to your class participation score. When you hear the word system, what comes to mind? Okay, anyone would like to recite this beautiful sunny morning? 10, 9, you know the consequence if nobody raises their hand. 8, say, go ahead.
Like a cycle po.
Okay, say says cycle. Maybe let's hear from 2 more people in the class. 10, 9, 8. Maxine, go ahead.
Miss, when we say system, immediately I think of something collective po. Like a collective of things, a collective of organs, parang ganun po.
Okay, so a collection, something that involves more than one thing. And then last one for this, Stace, go ahead.
When I think of system po, I think of organization.
Okay, an organization, something that's made up of multiple moving parts. Okay, interesting association. So right now, for module 2, we are moving towards systems ecology. So I guess in all of the fields of ecology, this one is very interdisciplinary. kasi it examines ecosystems as complex and dynamic systems. So we get to integrate um, biology, physics, and chemistry because we look at all of those features in the environment. Apart from that, we get to apply principles from systems theory. We get to practice modeling. Hindi yung modeling na fashion show ha, yung modeling as in um, the use of artificial intelligence or algorithms to create predictions of what what a situation or phenomenon will be. Ganong klaseng modeling. And we get to do a lot of computational analysis when it comes to systems ecology, just so we get to understand how energy, how nutrients, and how organisms interact within ecological networks. So by studying ecosystems in this manner, napaka-holistic niya, no? We get to have insights into ecological stability, resilience, and sustainability. And so for me, this aspect of ecology is essential if we want to address environmental challenges, including climate change, which we're obviously experiencing now, biodiversity loss, and actually achieve a certain form of ecosystem management. Okay. Now, one of the common complaints about ecosystems is that they're difficult to study. And from a systems ecology perspective, ecosystems are often difficult to handle because they function as complex open systems. So this means they continuously, whatever you're studying, they continuously interact with their surroundings. If you compare that, kunwari sa controlled laboratory experiments. I mean, I come from a background of molecular biology and then I transitioned into ecology. So I used to live in a world where every single thing I control. And then all of a sudden I go on field and there are instances when there's nothing that I can control. So that can be frustrating, no? Kasi yun nga, in a controlled lab experiment, all the variables that I'm working with can be isolated and manipulated. But if you go out and look at ecosystems, they're influenced by sobrang dami, by sobra, by multiple dynamic factors. You have climate, you have species interactions, you have nutrient cycles, and then you also have human activities. So one major challenge when it comes to studying systems ecology is the impossibility of isolating an ecosystem without disrupting yung natural processes na meron siya. Energy, matter, even the organisms themselves, they constantly move in and out of ecosystems. So you can't really define the boundaries. You can't really control the external influences without altering the observations that you're trying to get. And then add to that what we call feedback loops. So you have your predator-prey dynamics, you have nutrient cycling. So all of these, they create non-linear relationships. So what we mean by this is small changes can have unpredictable and far-reaching effects. I think people have been very creative in interpreting this, yung butterfly effect. Like, there's this line, a very popular line in, I think, an early 2000s movies wherein they keep on saying that the flap of a butterfly's wings can create a tornado in another part of the world. So, of course, they've been very creative in interpreting that. But in a way, something like that is possible in nature. So, because of all of these complexities, sometimes we have to rely on predicting things using algorithms, using artificial intelligence, using computational simulations, so that we can have a certain level of observation that is holistic, so that we can speed up time and see what will happen 20 years from now, 50 years from now, when we're not here in the planet. We use all of these things so that we can save money also kasi ang mahal to actually set up probes and measure every single thing, every single minute of every day. So those are some of the things we end up doing rather than yun nga, attempting to isolate every single piece of information, every single aspect of the ecosystem from their broader environmental concept. Environmental context, sorry. So in systems ecology, we have what we call system boundaries. Nature has no boundaries, no? Pero kasi if we follow that, hindi na tayo makakapag-aral. It would be very difficult to study ecology. So in order to adapt or adjust to that, in systems ecology, we implement what we call system boundaries. So these are conceptual limits. So sa utak lang natin siya nag-exist ha. So these are conceptual limits drawn around an ecological system so that we can define what is included in the study, and we can also define what should be treated as external to the study. Outside na siya ng pakialam natin. So they help identify yung scope and scale of analysis, up to what point lang yung aaralin natin. We can separate internal processes like nutrient cycling and species interactions from external drivers such as climate or human activity. And we can determine what inputs, let's say sunlight, nutrients, immigration, and outputs such as heat, waste materials, emigration are tracked. So dahil ecosystems are open and interconnected, these boundaries, hindi siya literal na pader, no? It's not a literal fence, but these boundaries are permeable, very similar to our cell membrane. If you've taken up basic botany, zoology, or cell biology, they're very much like our cell membrane. They're permeable and dynamic, rather than being fixed structures. So they can expand, they can contract, all dependent on ecological processes and, of course, our research objectives. So in this way, boundaries actually serve as analytical tools for understanding how systems function and interact with the environment. Okay. So ginawa ko lang yung drawing na yun para hindi kayo masyadong ma-overwhelm. Pero ito yung actual representation of how systems boundaries can actually be applied to a particular research. So this one is in a farming system. More often than not, we implement system boundaries in studies that care or is concerned about human activities. So ito, it shows how boundaries, so we have several levels of boundaries. So we've drawn them to separate the core system. So that's your farm, okay, the one in the middle, and its immediate actors or the immediate factors that affect it. So we separate it from the wider environment that could still actually influence it. So the innermost boundary, so that's the one surrounded by the solid oval, okay, this encloses the farming system itself. So this includes yung mga individual farms. So hindi necessarily isang farm lang ha. Individual farms, farm households, the people who are working in the farms, contract workers, so these are part-time workers, local credit unions, and closely linked farms. So these are the individuals and processes that are directly involved in daily farm operations. The middle boundary, so that's the one with the dotted line, okay? These are the ones surrounding the individuals and processes, but basically they interact frequently with farms, but they're not necessarily part of the farm itself. So these are your suppliers, kasi sila yung nagpo-provide ng feeds, nagpo-provide ng itatanim, nagki-care for the health of the animals in the farm. These are local government units. They provide the permits kasi that allow the farms to continue working. These are the technology providers. So the people who provide the machines, who provide the programs that allow the farm to adjust and adopt. You have your large-scale processors. So these are the companies that receive the products from the farm so that they can process it and supply it to people. You have your financial institutions, so banks, insurance agencies. So they make sure that people working in the farm have financial support if needed. You have producer organizations. So these are usually cooperatives who dictate the price, the value, the quality of the fruits, vegetables, and even meat that the farms are producing. And then you have your policymakers. So these are the the people we elect into office who create the laws regarding farming. So all of these groups, all of these people, all of these companies, they influence farms and are influenced by them. So they actually form a two-way relationship. And then finally, we have your third boundary. So this is the dotted oval. Beyond this, these are the people, the companies, the institutions, and the different forces that actually exert indirect influence onto the farming system, but are only weakly influenced in return. So examples include consumers. Kinakain kasi natin yung pinoproduce nila. And then our choices, what we buy in the market, could indirectly shape what kinds of crops are being grown in farms or what kinds of meat are being prioritized. Another example would be export markets. If suddenly there is an interest in quinoa, all of a sudden Latin America is cutting down their forests so that they can farm quinoa more and distribute it to people. And all of a sudden, the Latin Americans who have been dependent on quinoa as their staple food, they can no longer afford it because it's being marketed as a luxury food in other parts of the world. Sorry, gini-guilt trip ko lang kayo for eating something that's not locally produced. But yeah, seriously, the people who are used to quinoa as their staple diet, they can no longer afford it kasi yun nga, yung mga sosyalera sa ibang countries, yeah, post pa sa IG more. Anyway, so yeah, so that's another thing. Then you have your NGOs who can exert pressure in both local and international markets. People who watch out for greenwashing, etc. So they can also indirectly influence how farms work. You have your international ingredient suppliers who are secondary buyers of products. And again, you have your international policymakers who shape broader investment and food policy. So if you look at the bigger picture, the screen, these boundaries show us how the farming system is actually nested within wider economic, social, and policy environments. So they all have varying degrees of exchange. So the system boundaries that you're seeing, yung dark line, yung dashed oval, yung dotted na oval, they're not rigid barriers, but they're more analytical distinctions, and they show different levels of influence as well as interaction. So sometimes in systems ecology, we go beyond nature, but just to go back to nature and things that we can measure using STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, just in case some of you are not familiar with that term. So in the systems ecology that we will be doing in this class, we get to view ecosystems as open systems that continuously exchange energy, matter, as well as information across their boundaries. So we can view that these exchanges are fundamental kasi they dictate how ecosystems function, how ecosystems adapt, and how ecosystems sustain themselves. So one of the key things that we get to look at would be energy. So the main input for energy is solar radiation, the sun. Without the sun, we will not exist, no? So it's the center of the solar system, literally and figuratively, in the sense that without the sun, there would be no life in our planet. Because it's solar energy that drives photosynthesis, that only primary producers are capable of. And then once primary producers have acquired that solar radiation, energy can now enter as chemical energy. So this would be in the form of carbohydrates that most organisms consume. This would be in the form of organic matter that can be transmitted by abiotic factors into different parts of ecosystems. Now, the internal flow of energy is facilitated through the food web. Wow, food web. You might have encountered that as early as elementary. It seems so simple, but it's quite poetic in the sense that we get to see how energy is transferred from producers to consumers to decomposers, and there is transformation in that energy at each trophic level. And so the output when it comes to energy is that energy eventually leaves the system as heat. No, the heat that you feel from your body, that's energy leaving your system. And this actually follows the second law of thermodynamics, and there we see the physics and chemistry coming in. So that's why, since heat is continuously released, since energy continuously leaves the system, this means that all ecosystems are dependent on continuous inputs. We can't actually cycle energy. Energy is lost. And so in order for us to maintain energy, we have to continuously receive energy from the sun as well. Okay, so napaka-importante talaga ng araw. Now, something different happens when it comes to matter. When it comes to matter, the input would be your nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, silica, carbon dioxide, oxygen. You have water, and other organic materials. They enter through ecosystems from the atmosphere, our air, soil, or even neighboring systems. Now, within that system, internal cycling is possible. Matter can actually be recycled through processes such as decomposition, nutrient cycling, and predation. And the output, I guess matter can be exported as sediments, leached nutrients, or even migrating organisms. But as long as they don't leave the planet, these matter can eventually be recycled, but perhaps in a different ecosystem. So kunwari, a fish leaves a coral reef, so the coral reef would lose the nutrients that's trapped in the fish, and the nutrients that's in the fish will be transported elsewhere into a different reef, into a different part of the ocean, into a different ecosystem. But if you look at the planet as one big ecosystem, as one big biosphere, basically matter is just cycled and transported within it. Okay. Now, information, of course, is something that behaves in a similar manner. Information in a biological sense would be how organisms sense and respond to signals from the environment. So you have day length, temperature, presence of predators. Lahat naman yan napapansin ng mga hayop, even plants. So information is perceived through our senses. But another form of information can also play into the system, and this is through genetic material. So our DNA is also information. And so it can enter or exit ecosystems as well. Now, information in a biological manner flows through signaling, communication, and also behavioral interactions. So you have alarm calls, you have frogs croaking in a different manner for mating. You have birds having different chirps or caws when they see predators, when they see food, when it's mating season. It can also be through chemical cues, like roaches. Pag inapakan nyo sila, they release allergens or chemical warning signals in the air. But again, sorry, may bias talaga ako sa genetics. It could also be through genetic recombination, which happens during reproduction, during meiosis, during mutations. So that's how information flows internally. And so output of information in a biological sense is that ecosystems can actually send information outwards. They can send visual cues, like vegetation cover can be seen from afar, sometimes even as far up as outer space. It could be through atmospheric signals, like massive release of oxygen, massive release of pollen, or even human-generated ecological data. So to sum things up, from a systems ecology perspective, ecosystems are sustained by energy inputs that flow one way. So we get it from the sun, we release it as heat. Ecosystems are sustained by matter. And matter, we get inputs, but we cycle it internally. And it also gets sustained by information. And information inputs are the ones that guide adaptation and regulation. So the balance and exchange of these three flows across system boundaries determine how resilient and how productive ecosystems are, and they also determine how ecosystems interact with the broader environment around them. Okay? So apart from the flow of these three major things, another thing that controls ecosystems are feedback loops. So they describe how processes within an ecosystem regulate themselves through cycles of cause and effect. So I call feedback loops nature's karma. No? So akala natin ang karma, it's all that mythical mumbo jumbo. But actually, nature functions through biochemical karma. Kasi feedbacks are actually very, very important, studying how these work if we want to understand how ecosystems achieve stability and how they adapt to change. So they usually occur when the outcome of a process influences the very process itself. So we actually have positive feedback and we also have negative feedback. So let's look at positive feedback first. So these are your reinforcing loops. So what they do is they amplify change within a system. So it pushes it further into the same direction. So when positive feedback happens, it usually leads to rapid shifts. Mabilis yung pagbabago. There would be rapid growth and sometimes even collapse if we don't control or we don't check it. So what are examples of positive feedback in ecology? Let's look at how ice is melting in the Arctic. As the ice melts, darker ocean water is exposed, and this absorbs more heat. Since it's absorbing more heat, more ice melts. Sad, no? Eutrophication. Excess nutrients increase algal blooms. The algae eventually decomposes and releases more nutrients, and this would fuel algal growth. So lalong lumalala. So positive feedbacks often drive nonlinear dynamics. So nag-change ng dominant organisms usually in an ecosystem. And sometimes there are what we call tipping points when, for example, an ecosystem could be stable and then all of a sudden it collapses. So positive feedback loops are usually the ones that drive that. Now, when it comes to negative feedback, this is also called stabilizing feedback loops. what negative feedback does is it counteracts change. So it helps the system maintain balance and homeostasis. So they provide stability by keeping processes within certain limits. So what are examples of this? So predator-prey interactions. If you have an increased number of prey, so dumadami yung pwedeng kainin, it leads to more predators, which eventually, if you have more predators, maraming kumakain, so this would reduce the prey population, so it prevents overpopulation. When it comes to plant growth and nutrient uptake naman, as plant biomass increases, nutrients are depleted from the soil, and once the nutrients are gone, the plants will die. So it's a cycle, no? So negative feedbacks help ecosystems self-regulate, and usually negative feedbacks allow ecosystems to survive even though disturbances can happen. Okay. So, ayan, wait lang, nagawa pala ako ng... Okay, so just in case some of you are not familiar with dark ocean, so this is dark ocean water. Paano ko ba siya i-describe na hindi trite? Dark ocean water ay yung tubig na dark. Dark ocean water, basically, as you go deeper kasi into the ocean, sunlight gets absorbed by the water. So kaya siya tinatawag na dark kasi red, orange, and yellow wavelengths tend to disappear first. So this leaves mostly blue and then eventually black. Nothing. So about 200 meters, this is usually called the twilight zone for divers. Very little light penetrates, so the water looks dark or black. So in the Arctic portion, when ice is melting, it exposes that darker part of the ocean, so it speeds up the absorption of the heat. No, so yun. And again, this is an example of positive feedback. This one naman shows you data that represents predator-prey interactions. So the green line shows the changes in prey population sizes. So when the prey population goes up, okay, so it happens first. You will notice that the predator population, that's the red line, will go up slightly after it. And then when the prey population goes down, okay, you will see that the predator population goes down slightly after it. So that's evidence that one affects the other, or basically the other is the consequence of the previous one's pattern. So yung prey population, tataas muna siya bago tumaas yung predator. And then pag bumaba na yung prey population, saka lang bababa yung predator. And again, this is an example of a negative feedback loop. Ito naman, just to emphasize the negative feedback loop when it comes to plant growth and nutrient uptake. So plants, even though sometimes there's detritus that can release nutrients back into the soil, there is a carrying capacity, a maximum number of plants that a certain area can take in, because plants will continue to acquire nutrients from the soil. And so if you have too many plants, eventually, the return of the nutrients to the soil through detritus would be too slow. When we say detritus, those are decomposing leaves, plant matter, animal matter. So decomposition is a lot slower than uptake or the absorption of nutrients. And so if that's the case, eventually, once this has maxed out the number of plants that's there, some plants will die or slow down growth just so that nutrients can be introduced again into the environment. So again, this is an example of negative feedback. Now, this one, eutrophication, is an example of positive feedback. So here you can see nitrogen and phosphorus from the environment, usually introduced in large amounts as runoff from neighboring farms, from deposits ng mga factories who have a lot of chemical waste. This would introduce nutrients that would cause algae to bloom. So algae are not necessarily bad things. Fish and other water creatures get to eat them. They produce oxygen and so on. So in the right amounts, they're okay, except that there are certain algae that produce toxins, kaya nagkakaroon ng red tide. So when water creatures eat the algae that contain toxins, they die or they get sick. And then when we eat those sea creatures, we also get sick or die. So that's one bad effect. Another is that when the algae get to cover the entire surface of the water, this prevents oxygen and sunlight from coming in, which causes the organisms who need the sunlight and oxygen to die. And so nagkakaroon ng fish kills. So massive amounts of fish dying. So all of these deaths, and even the algae dying themselves, that would cause decomposition and introduction of more nutrients into the water, thus leading to more nutrients in the water. Kaya siya positive feedback. Okay? So again, those are examples of positive and negative feedback. Before I proceed though with our discussions, any questions or points of clarification regarding positive and negative feedback? Okay, if wala, then I guess we can move forward to emergent properties. Okay, emergent properties. So these are characteristics of an ecosystem that usually arise from the interactions among the many different parts of ecosystems. But you cannot predict it simply by studying the individual components alone. So basically, they emerge only when organisms, populations, and processes are considered together as a system. So we will be looking at a lot of emergent properties. So basically, it's saying the sum is greater than the whole. My analogy here is actually not necessarily science related. You know, in El Shaddai, I don't know if you're familiar with that. They have this saying where 1 + 1 = 3. So parang when I was younger, super irritated ako doon kasi, wala, sinisira nila yung math ability ng mga tao. But what they mean by that is that when, ano ba yun? Sorry, I want to make sure I get this right. So I'm looking through my notes as to what it really means kasi I've been corrected before. But I remember it connected to emergent properties. Yeah, so it's related to the concept of marriage. So 1 + 1 = 3 represents now marriage under God. So when a man and the woman come together in a Christian marriage, they don't just form two individuals together kasi God, the emergent property, is at the center. So the union becomes stronger as a whole. So instead of just having two, the equation is seen as 3. So I eventually, I mean, again, when I was younger and very irreverent, I would eye roll at that statement, but basically that's how ecosystems work. It's not like 1 tree plus another tree equals 2 trees. If you have 1 tree, its output would be one thing. But if you have 2 trees in one location, it's not just a matter of 1 plus 1 equals, okay, times 2 yung output. And to connect it to something real that's happened to us recently, at the marine station in Lian, we used to have many trees before the new building was built. Hala, nagkwento na ako ng hanash. Feeling ko kinakabahan si Sir Lau. And the contractor, ayun na naman tayo sa mga contractor. I mean, obviously, they needed to cut down some of the trees in order to build our new building. I mean, we are not oblivious to that, okay? We know you need to cut down the trees to build a new building. However, there were some trees in that area that were contributing more to the ecology of the place compared to others. So, when we visited the place after initial construction has started, we were shocked na merong mga nawawalang puno. And some of those trees, it was the older brothers, Lasallian brothers, who planted them. And the engineers and the contractors were all like, why are you being such a big baby out of this? Like, yeah, fine, we cut down some trees, you can plant it back. And it was so hard for us to explain to them the emergent properties of those adult trees. Kasi it wasn't just one tree that disappeared and therefore you can replace it with a younger tree. The positive impact that they were creating on the environment was more than just their numbers. Okay? Yeah, and if you look at the chat that Sir Lawrence has sent, one of the things that also protect our trees from being just cut down is that even our national agencies recognize their emergent properties. And so you have to get a permit from the ENR to have them cut down. But when we saw the permit that they got, they were permitted to cut down some trees, but not the trees that they cut. So it was very frustrating. So we had a big discussion about it. I don't think they've fully gotten our point, but it's done. And since then, I swear, actually, since then, it's like nature has been exacting its revenge on us, because ever since those trees were cut down, every single year and every single typhoon, the station would get flooded. When in the past, when these trees were standing, we had floods, but very minimal. Now, the old portion of the station, the water comes in and it floods and it, yeah, destroys things. So it's just sad kasi it's us, the users of the station, that are being harmed by the consequences, by that positive feedback loop. So when we say positive feedback, hindi laging positive, I mean, hindi laging good yung effect, no? Sometimes bad yung effect niya. But yeah, we are the ones who are being harmed by this positive feedback loop. But the engineers and the contractors, kumita lang sila. Grabe, no? From both national scale to even within the scale of the university, this, I was about to say the SHIT word, and then I was about to say the CRAP word, and then I realized this was being recorded. But yeah, this thing happens and it's hurting us. It's so frustrating. I'm sorry. I like what one of your classmates has sent through a private message, that it's hard to make people understand. But it's also possible that some people, they don't want to understand because it doesn't benefit them. I agree. But anyway, that's why we're here. That's why we have this class. We need to show you how things are working and how things are complicated. And I just wish that ecology was taught more in a lot of other subjects so that people would understand. Now, when you get greedy, the emergent properties of the universe, of the ecosystem, will actually claim that greed somewhere else. So it might not be you suffering, but there are prices to pay. People will suffer. And I truly, truly believe that if you were truly, truly selfish, you would know that the best way to live is to make sure that everybody is living well. And so nobody can truly enjoy life in a world where only you is enjoying and the rest of the world is suffering. A truly happy life is where everybody is happy as well. And I learned that through ecology. um, and that's why for this part of the course, we are challenging everybody to proceed with systems thinking. I know that, a lot of you, in order to survive a lot of your subjects, you proceed with a boxed-in thinking na aralin ko lang tong part na to, and then pag nag-exam na, kakalimutan ko na siya kasi hindi ko na siya kailangan. But you cannot survive that way with ecology. In ecology, we have to have systems thinking na nagbe-build upon each other lahat ng information. Kasi if you look at traditional or reductionist ecology, reductionist thinking, you look at ecosystems and things by breaking them into isolated parts. So you focus on a single species, you focus on a single population, you focus on a specific process. So you get to have detailed understanding of these things. So sobrang detailed pero sa isang bagay lang. In contrast, systems ecology emphasizes interactions, it emphasizes networks, it emphasizes dynamics among the different parts, among the different components. So it treats ecosystems as open, complex systems where energy, matter, and information get to flow across the boundaries. So yung reductionist thinking, what do the parts do? Yun yung usual question na tinatanong nyo. Sa systems ecology naman, ang tinatanong natin, how do the parts interact to produce emergent properties of the whole? So what versus how? Okay? Now, in order to achieve this way of thinking, we will focus on 3 key concepts that help explain why ecosystems behave in complex and sometimes unpredictable ways, like signal number 1 daw ngayon, pero maaraw and walang hangin. So first, holism. So this one captures the idea that ecosystems cannot be fully understood by studying their parts in isolation. So we have to look at interactions among species, physical processes, and feedback loops. Kasi all together, they create emergent properties. And ano ba yung emergent properties na to? You have resilience, you have productivity, you have biodiversity. Hindi lang po yan keywords na sinasabi ng mga NGO at funding agencies. When we say resilient, pag bumagyo, hindi lahat patay. Pag sinabi nating resilient, pag bumagyo, most of the structures that you've built is still standing. No, hindi yung nakasmile pa rin kami kahit nasa baha kami. That's not resilience. That's a mental health issue. How can we be smiling when our house is flooded? Resilience is building structures that do not get flooded or building structures away from places that get flooded. Yun ang resilience. Hindi lang siya keyword. Hindi po ako tumatakbo na politiko. I'm so sorry. When we say productivity, we don't just mean, okay, high productivity, so give us funding and dami-daming publications. No! Productivity means we're producing enough food in such that walang magugutom. Walang magugutom kasi mura ang pagkain. And when we say mura ang pagkain, we're not talking about Lucky Me Pancit Canton, although I love that so much. Hindi sardinas na nasa delata, as in healthy food. 20 pesos per kilo na bigas. That's productivity. Kasi we're producing high quality, healthy food that people can afford. That's real productivity. And when we say biodiversity, hindi siya yung mangrove planting ka sa seagrass beds para makapag-picture-picture. It means may healthy na mangrove forests na tama ang species na nandoon, tama yung location, para pag nagkaroon ng storm surge, hindi nadudurog yung mga barangay na nasa likod. Sorry, ang init ng ulo ko ang aga-aga. A lot of people kasi hide behind these terms as if by saying them, na-achieve mo na siya. Pero hindi naman talaga siya ginagawa. And so yun nga, when we understand systems thinking through the small activities and experiments that we're gonna be teaching you, mas maiintindihan natin yung holism. So I'm just saying this because a lot of the experiments that we do to get the data to achieve holism, it's not easy. Okay, so we're gonna be doing phosphate and silicate testing and so on. Maybe that's why people don't like it. Kasi before we get to have the right answer, we have to do so many things. Kasi nga hindi siya simple. Pero kailangan kasi siyang gawin. Walang shortcut. Sana may shortcut. Lahat naman tayo gusto ng shortcut, 'di ba? Pero hindi. I mean, sorry, I'm starting to watch. I'm in season 1 of Demon Slayer right now. Sana Hashira agad si Tanjiro, di ba? Pero hindi. Takes him a while. Several seasons before he's strong enough to destroy Muzan. I mean, di ba? So, hindi yung shortcut. Nanonood tayo ng anime, nanonood tayo ng teleserye. Sana nagagamit natin siya para maintindihan yon, di ba? But anyway, going back, para makanood na ako ulit ng Demon Slayer in between classes. Joke lang. Non-linearity, the second concept. This means that ecological responses, yung mga nakikita natin na reaction ng environment, they're rarely proportional to changes in drivers. Meaning, a small increase in nutrients, konti lang naman po. Pinakonti na namin yung lumalabas sa factory namin. It might first just boost productivity, but eventually, it would trigger algal blooms and oxygen collapse. Maglalagay lang naman po kami ng konting lupa para ma-reclaim yung Manila Bay. Maliit lang naman po yan eh. Hindi naman sobrang laki. Eventually, baha na yung buong Manila. So kakatapos pa lang nung reclamation, nasa dagat na ulit siya. Yun, no? Yun yung thing with non-linearity. Merong tipping points yung ecosystems kasi even though in our perspective, the changes that we're causing are small, they can actually produce disproportionately large effects. And so yan, yung reclamation na yan, I hope everybody who lives in NCR are capable of investing in their own boats. Because I wouldn't be surprised if in 10, 15 years, maybe sooner, for a portion of the year, we would be underwater. What I hate most is when scientists talk like this, we're being labeled as if we're anti-people. Kasi the common defense against these kinds of rhetoric, what I'm telling you right now is, but miss, people need money, people need jobs. This is gonna produce jobs, this is gonna be good for the economy. Yeah, but planting forests will be good for the economy if you pay the people who are planting forests. Improving agriculture is good for the economy because we need to pay our farmers the right amount of money. and not the money that we're giving them now. They're among the poorest of the poor. And it sucks that it's the people who's growing our food who can barely eat every day. So why is it that we have such fascination with concrete and metal, thinking that that's the only way for economies to grow? When in fact, when we continue building these things, the consequences are far worse than we think it is. So yeah, that's another thing about environmental science and ecology. It can be depressing. When I was taking up my master's, I think that was one of the lowest points in my life, not just because the subjects were hard, but because I at a certain point, I was so nihilistic and pessimistic that, it's like, there's nothing I can do to help the world. It flipped after a while when I realized that if I at least don't try, then what's the point of me being alive? So yeah, yun. Systems ecology almost always triggers me like this. And because we will end with this final point on resilience and thresholds. Kasi, yun nga, when we say resilience, it's an ecosystem's ability to absorb disturbances, not to shield away from it. We absorb it and then return to our prior state. No? Para tayong demon na nag-absorb lang. Tas, mas malakas na ako after. Ganerms. But, if the ecosystem is put in a vulnerable state, or if the stress pushes the system beyond the threshold, resilience can be lost. And that's what we have right now. And the ecosystems, our ecosystems, are reorganizing into a completely different regime. And when we say there's a regime change in an ecosystem, kung hindi tayo part ng system, it's just saying another organism becomes the dominant one. So kunwari, sa coral reef, if it loses its resilience, after a typhoon, the corals are destroyed. Instead of the corals growing back, it would become dominated by algae. So lumot na lang, wala nang corals. So hindi na siya maganda, but that's just from our perspective. But that would also support a different set of fish, a different set of organisms. It doesn't look that scary, right? Parang, okay, pumangit lang, Kebs. Pero tingnan natin, right now, the ecosystem regime is we are the dominant life forms. But if we do not boost our resilience, there will be a regime change. And the regime change often begins with extinction. So it will not be surprising that our species would end up disappearing because of our actions. And sadly, at this point, the ecosystem destruction that mankind is unleashing appears to be in a positive feedback loop. Our initial destruction is forcing us to destroy more. And so a regime change could happen within the next 3 to 5 decades. Ako, patay na ako nun. Ang saya, no? Pero I owe it to the next generation to warn them, to inspire them to change, and perhaps even help them find solutions to the problem that the older generations have created for us. One of the things I would often fondly listen to when Sir Al would have this lecture is we bring our students to the field so they can fall in love with the coral reefs. And we bring them to Lian and how beautiful it is. And then he would also say, pero actually, nagagandahan na kayo dyan. Nung bata pa siya, mas maganda pa siya nun. And I would almost always imagine, wow, ang ganda, wow, ano pa kaya siya before? Now, there's a little bit of bitterness to that, in the sense na, so maganda na pala siya dati pa. Bakit wala kayo halos nagawa? And so now, our statement is, we show you the coral reefs, so not hopefully, maybe to fall in love with it, but also so you can say goodbye. So you can say goodbye because there is a very, very big possibility, maybe a probability, that if we don't do anything right now, they would disappear within the next 3 to 5 decades. So ayun po. That's it for today. On Monday, sorry, let's go back to our calendar. Let me just flip back to the right slide. Tinap-share ko lang para hindi kayo mahilo. Oops. Escape. Okay, here we go. Let's go back to our OG slide for schedule. So yeah, that's it for today. Immediately after closing the Zoom, I will publish module 2. So for those of you na medyo nabitin pa sa ating discussion this morning, you can go ahead and watch lecture 1. On Monday, we'll be talking more about systems ecology. And then if the weather permits, on Thursday next week, we'll have your long exam for module 1. Okay? So before we close today's session, any questions or points of clarification from our class? Okay, if none, I hope you can use today to shore up and build resilience for you and your family. Ingat po ang lahat, and I hope everybody stays safe and warm for the next couple of days. Thank you po. See you on Monday.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.